So Pirkei Avos chapter 4, we're almost at the end of the parak, the end of the chapter. Actually, if we were to finish everything on the page, we would be at the end of the chapter. I just don't expect that we will. Beginning with the second to last Mishnah, which I have listed as Mishnah 27, perhaps one of the most well-known Mishnahs in all of Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah teaches us Rabbi Elazar HaKapar Omer. Rabbi Elazar HaKapar says, Hakina v'hataiva v'hakavod motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. Envy, lust or desire, and honor, or the desire for honor, motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. Here they translate it as put a man out of the world, or you could say remove a person from the world. So these three traits, these three midos, I think are held up as like the source for all sin, all error that a person could succumb to in life are generally rooted in one of these three places, either in kina, in envy, in taiva and desire, or in kavod, in honor. These one can say are the roots of all things. You can add anger, but I think anger might sometimes be rooted in these. And the way the Mishnah describes the impact on a person is it says they are motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam, they put a person out of the world. And that is a phrase that is unclear what it means and could have many possibilities. Just to put out some of the explanations, some of them we will have in the Midrash Shmuel, some of them not. One is just at its most simple level. You could say it kills you. These things will kill a person. If a person is too focused on or allows these traits to impact them too much, they could kill a person. Now, how that is needs to be explained. A second is that it removes a person from the world, meaning their life is not a life anymore. It's not a life that's worth, I don't say worth living, but it's, if a person is so focused on these things, then they don't have much of a life. They're like not living in this world. A third explanation could be that it takes you out of the next world. These are the roots of sin, and they will cause a person to lose their place, their portion in the next world. And finally, another possibility, there could be others, but another possibility I'm familiar with is it means that if a person is driven by these three traits, they are not in this world because they live in a fantasy world. They live in a world of mistaken perspectives and misunderstandings, and you're not living in the normal world because everything is colored by these different traits. Okay, so with that, just as an introduction, let's delve a little bit deeper into what these three traits are, how they impact a person, how they remove a person from the world. And the Midrash Shmuel begins by relating this Mishnah to the previous Mishnah. The previous Mishnah taught, don't look at the kan, don't look at the jug, rather look at what is inside the jug. And we discussed last week a number of different explanations for that teaching. And the Midrash Shmuel, it's actually a very interesting way to explain this Mishnah. He wants to suggest that each of these traits, negative traits, corresponds to a different explanation of the previous Mishnah. So in the previous Mishnah, we said, don't look at the kan, don't look at the jug, rather look at what's inside. So the first one explanation that we had for that was that when it comes to choosing a teacher, don't just look at the outside, but look at what's inside, meaning even if a person, although in the Mishnah before that, we had said that it's better to look for an older teacher than a younger teacher, but if there's a younger teacher who is very bright and talented and can be an excellent teacher to somebody, then don't just look at the outside. They may not have the long beard and the right hat or whatever it is to be that makes them look like the right teacher. But don't look at the outside. Look at what's on the inside. And if the person has, even if they're young and doesn't look like they could be a good Rebbe, but look at what's inside. That was one explanation. And to that, the this Mishnah comes to teach you that when we encounter somebody like that, somebody who's young and very talented, we might be a little bit jealous. Why did God reward them with such intellect, with such charisma, with such talent? And out of jealousy, we might choose not to be drawn to them and might choose not to learn from them. And this Mishnah says that no, don't let the kinna, don't let the jealousy, the envy get the better of us. Don't look at the outside, look at what's inside. If it's a good teacher, then go learn from them. The second explanation of that Mishnah was that don't look at the outsides of ourselves. Don't look at just our guf, our body, but look at what is inside. Look at our neshama. And the message of that was, don't focus on just feeding our bodies, chasing after material pleasures of the world, but remember what's inside. Look at what's inside of you, your neshama, your soul, and feed the soul. Feed the soul with Torah and mitzvos. And to that, our Mishnah reminds us, this Mishnah, not to chase after taiva, after desire, after lust, the physical pleasures of the world. Don't look at the outside. Don't look at ourselves as just a body, but remember our neshama, remember our soul, to be able to seek spiritual pursuits. And the third explanation of the previous Mishnah was, don't look at the outside of another person. A person may appear a certain way that makes us naturally we might look down on them because of their physical appearance, their dress, whatever it might be, that on the outside it's somebody who, from the way that they look, we're turned away, or we're tempted to disdain them, to not treat them respectfully. And the Mishnah said, don't look at the outside, look at the inside. Look at the person's heart, look at who they are on the inside, not just how they look on the outside. And to that, our Mishnah reminds us that kavod, seeking honor, takes a person out of this world, meaning that a person might think that if I honor a person who is like that, it will affect my honor. If I honor such a person who appears lowly and unkempt, or just doesn't look good, then somebody who's maybe we're naturally turned away from, if I honor such a person, it hurts my honor. And the Mishnah says that that's not the case. That or at least the Mishnah says, don't do that. Don't consider your honor. Rather, treat them with the proper honor, because all of these three things, kina, taiva, and kavod, take a person out of this world. And in this case, in this explanation, each of them corresponds to something that we learned from the previous Mishnah. Don't be jealous of a person who one can learn from, even if they're young and talented, but don't be jealous. Go and learn from them. Taiva, the seeking physical pleasures. Don't focus on our bodies, on the outside. Focus on the inside. Focus on the neshama. And kavod, don't worry. Don't think that if we honor somebody who appears like somebody who shouldn't be honored, or is that's going to impact our honor. But don't worry. We shouldn't be worrying about our own honor, which actually ties us back to the opening Mishnah of the chapter. I think it's the first Mishnah, that, and this the Abarbanel makes the connection. At the beginning of the chapter, we have another famous Mishnah, the teaching of Ben Zoma, and Ben Zoma taught that who is wise, one who learns from all people. And then he said, who is strong, who is mighty, Ezu Gibor, Hakovish is Yitzur, one who overcomes their Yetzer, their inclination. And we said, who is rich, one who is happy with their lot, Sameach Bechalko. And who is honorable, one who honors others. This was at the beginning of the chapter. And corresponding to that, now here at the end of the chapter, Rebbe Lazar teaches us that there's three negative traits that would counteract our ability to do those things, that's where the battle lies, right? Who is strong? One who overcomes their yetzer, their inclination. Sorry, actually, not necessarily in order. Let's start with who's rich? One who's happy with their lot. So how do you? What's the battle over? What negative trait do we have to overcome to be happy with our lot? We have to overcome the trait of kina, of envy, and not looking at what others have and being jealous, and rather being happy with whatever Hashem has granted us. Sameach b'chelko. So that corresponds to kina, to jealousy. And who is mighty, we said, if you can overcome your inclination, that's what Ben Zoma teaches at the beginning of the chapter, and the pursuit of pleasures, of taiva, and just chasing after whatever we desire without overcoming that inclination, that is the competing negative trait that we need to overcome. And the last thing was, who is honorable? One who honors others. So if we're completely focused on our own honor, then turns out that we won't really be honored. We are honored by honoring others and not by focusing on our own pursuit of honor. And so each of these traits that we mention here in our Mishnah tie back to Ben Zoma's teachings at the beginning of the chapter. Now, we had a number of explanations for what it means that these traits are motziin es ha'adam min ha'olam. They take us out of this world. It could be that they, as I said, that they kill us. It could be that life is just not a life when you're always focused on these things. And both of these explanations, I think, work together if we just think for a moment about each of these traits. And the Midrash Shmuel writes that if a person is envious of somebody who's more wealthy than them, that's something that will never end. That's something that will never end because, I mean, unless you're the richest person in the world, which I'm sure then you'll be envious of something else, but a person who's envious, so they see somebody, their neighbor, their friend, and they have this and that. And they say, I wish I had what my neighbor has. And then one day, they get a raise, they get a better job, they win the lottery, whatever it is, and now they can get what their neighbor has. Okay. Are they no longer envious? Nope, they're still envious because now they look down the block and they see the other neighbor and he has something else or she has something else. So it's not like there's an end to this. As soon as we hit what we envied today, then we'll just be envious of something new tomorrow. It's a midah that we need to overcome. It's a trait that we need to overcome. It's not a trait that can be satisfied, and it's not something that there's ever an end to. He cites I think it's a verse in Mishnah. I think Rekev atzamos kina, that kina, envy, like rots the bones, and basically it wears you down, and a person will always be worrying and feeling hurt and feeling down because they don't have what somebody else has. And in that way, the way that the Midrash Shmuel says it is, it can make a person sick. It can make a person sick, it can make a person depressed and sick, and it can literally kill them. So that's if we understand Motziin es Adam min ha'olam to be in that sense that it can kill a person physically. But even if we don't take it like that, it's not it will ruin somebody's life. If a person isn't sameach b'chalko, if they're not happy with their lot, they're always focused on what the next person has, then it's not it's just it's they're not sameach, they're not besimcha, they're not happy, and it's really takes them out of this world because they can't live a happy life. And this doesn't elaborate on how to overcome this. But the first thing I think is just to think about it. I think that we have these moments. Everybody has these moments where we see somebody else's life and we say that I wish I had that. I wish I had their situation or their money or their possessions. And we need to, as soon as we have that thought, we have to pause and rethink and say, no, Hashem has chosen my life for me because this is what God thinks is best for me. These are the challenges that God wants me to overcome. These are the circumstances that God wants me to live with. And I think that's the first step to overcoming this perspective. And then to remind ourselves that it doesn't get us anywhere to be envious. It hurts us, and we need to try to recalibrate. And that's a way to happiness, not by focusing on what others have and trying to be like them or get what they have. That's not a path to happiness. The path to happiness is learning to appreciate the life that we each have individually. The second thing, taiva, desire. So this isn't necessarily related to what other people have. It could be, I have no idea what everybody else has. I know what I have, and I know that I want more. I either want more pleasures or I want more money. And again, it's not something that is ever satisfied. A person who's chasing after physical pleasures at no point says, okay, now I have enough. I'm good. The more a person chases physical pleasures, the more that they want more. And that's true for money as well. He quotes I think it's also a verse in Mishnah, Oev kesef lo yispa kesef. Somebody who loves money will never be satisfied with money and with what they have. And again, that constant and everlasting pursuit will lead us to either physical sickness or, again, to not live a happy life because we're so focused on always the next thing that we need, the next thing that we need. And it's not about what we have, it's about what we don't have. Not just what else can I get, but I need the next thing. And lastly, the Mishnah talks about honor, kavod. And if a person is always pursuing honor, then they don't have a life because they will never get the honor that they want. If it's somebody who's interested in honor, then at no point will they say, this is enough. I'm good. I have enough honor. They will constantly be seeking more and more honor. And he says, he points out, he says, and the problem is you can't ask anyone for it, right? Because that's too embarrassing. That's a person is looking for honor. You can't actually admit it. So instead, the person is sick over it. Nobody gives me enough honor, and the person who's seeking honor will be slighted and insulted by every seeming insult or somebody ignores them for 1 second and they're insulted. And again, it's physically damaging to a person to be in that state, to be depressed over that. And it's also, again, not a happy life to always feel that we're being dishonored. Just don't worry, we don't need the honor. It doesn't help us anyways, it doesn't get us anywhere. And it gives a person this like feeling for a moment, but it's fleeting, it's not real, it's nothing that actually makes our lives better. And therefore, it's not something that's worth pursuing. We mentioned another explanation for Motziin es Adam min ha'olam. They remove a person from the world. We said they remove us from the next world because these negative traits lead us down a path of sin towards Averos. A person who is jealous, who's envious, who's always trying to get what other people have. So it leads them down a path that leads them to theft, withholding wages, overcharging people, different explicit Torah prohibitions. And so the Torah in many places explicitly prohibits these types of activities of which are rooted in kinna and envying, wanting something that somebody else has. Then there's taiva, there's pursuit of desires. And when we're in pursuit of desires, we're not in control of our own desires. It leads us to consume foods that we're forbidden to consume, right? And maybe for some people, everybody's kind of in a different place on that spectrum of what they're willing to eat and what not. But there are some things that might be borderline questionable. It could be something that's certainly not kosher. No way, I'm not gonna eat that. But if it's maybe it's a question, maybe I'm more tempted. The more I'm in control of myself, then the less tempted I am to step over that boundary on something that is questionable. There's other types of physical pleasures that are forbidden relationships, etc. So the negative trait of taiva, of chasing after physical desires, leads us down a path towards sin. And so too, the trait of chasing honor, sometimes we want to get honor through putting down another person. Makes us feel good when we put down other people, lashon hara, embarrassing others. We crack a good joke. And all of this, motziin es adam min ha'olam, they take us out of the next world. These are things that cause us to lose our portion, or a part of our portion in the world to come. And finally, just one more explanation, which I didn't mention yet. Another way that it's motziin es adam min ha'olam, that it takes us out of this world, is the Midrash Shmuel cites from Rav Moshe al Moshnino, who says that really a person who is guided by these types of thoughts, these types of traits, it means that their mind is no longer, the term he uses is operating with seichel hayashar, straight intellect, proper, a proper perspective. Everything is, all of our actions and our thoughts are processed through a filter of our midos, of our character. And the more we work on our midos, on our character traits, then the better perspectives that come out of our mind. So, and this impacts our actions. All our actions are impacted by that filter, by the midos, our character traits, our personality. And in order to have the right actions and the right thoughts, we need to first work on our midos, our character traits. And a person who's guided by these three character traits, it means their mind is not operating properly. It's not seichel hayashar. It's not they're not of a proper and straight mind. And in a certain sense, they're not, he says they're not a person. Not a person. He doesn't say they're like an animal, but it's almost like that. They're a person who's operating, but who's operating through these traits is instinctive, impulsive, and isn't really realizing their potential as a person, as an Adam, as a Tselem Elokim, somebody who's creating the image of God. And in that way, they're like not in this world because they're not a person. They're not a. They're his language is batul min ha'olam. They're like nullified from this world. Um, if they're not walking as a proper, upright human being in this world, then they're not in this world in a certain sense. So that's the last perspective that we'll share on that. So to summarize what we said on this Mishnah, so we said first of all that this Mishnah, these three traits are the roots of basically all sin, and they correspond to three of the teachings of Ben Zoma from the beginning of the chapter, that who is happy, who is rich, one who's happy with what they have, who is strong, one who overcomes their inclination, and who is honored, one who honors others. These each correspond to one of those. These also correspond to the different interpretations of the previous Mishnah about learning from somebody, even though they are younger, but they are talented and wise, and we shouldn't be envious. Rather, we should be ready to learn from them. Don't look at the outside of ourselves, but at the inside. Don't look at the physical side of ourselves, but the spiritual side of ourselves. Therefore, don't chase after taiva, after desires, and honor even those who appear more lowly to us. Don't look at the outside, but look at the inside of a person, and even somebody who appears more lowly than us, we should treat them with proper honor. And these, like I said, these are each the roots of different sins. They can take us out of this world, they can take us out of the next world, and the pursuit of them is constant. Each of them is a never-ending pursuit that can drive us crazy and ruin our life in this world, and also physically hurt us if we're in constant pursuit of these of things driven by these traits. Okay. Moving on to the next Mishnah, Mishnah Chaf Ches 28. And we are not going to learn the whole Mishnah now because it's very long. It's many pages of commentary in the Midrash Shmuel, but we will begin. And it begins as follows. I'm going to read the whole thing now, and then we're not going to explain every word. There are many, as you'll see, so many different things in this Mishnah. It's almost hard to piece together. Hu haya omer, he used to say, so another teaching of Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, hayulodim lamus, the ones who are born are to die, v'amesim le'echayos, and the ones who are dead are to live, v'achayim lidon, and those who are living will be judged. Leida lehodia o leivada, to know, to make known, to let be known maybe. Here they say to have the knowledge, shehu kel, that he is God. Hu hayotzer, he is the creator, the designer, the former. Hu abore, he's the creator. Hu hamaving, he's the discerner, the understander. Hu adaying, he's the judge. Hu aid, he's a witness. Hu baal din, here they say the complainant, the litigant. Hu asib ladom, he will judge in the future. Blessed is he. There is no iniquity before him. There's no forgetfulness. There's no favoring. There's no accepting of bribes. Shakol shalo, because everything is his. Vidan, you should know, shakol that everything is according to a calculation. The Mishnah is not as long as it looks because it's on the source sheet, because I see I doubled it. I copied, but I didn't cut. So you can skip to the last paragraph now, because it's just repeated twice, the Hebrew. Vidash shakol lefi hacheshbon. You should know that everything has a calculation. Va'al yavtichacha yitzurcha shashol beis manas lecha. And don't let your inclination assure you that the grave or that Gehenna is a place of refuge for you. You were forced to be created, and you were forced to be born, and you were forced to live, and you're forced to die. And you're forced that one day you will give a judgment and a reckoning before the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. So quite a Mishnah from Elazar HaKapar, just going on and on, all these different things, and seemingly very difficult to piece together what he's getting at here. Either it sounds like a lot of obvious stuff, or I don't know. So, okay, so let's start with the first line. And I think the most simple reading of the first line, Hayulodim Lamos, those who are born will die. V'amesim lehechayos. So it's to know that a person is born, they're going to die, and then they're going to be reborn. They're going to be resurrected. V'achayim lidon, and they're going to be judged. But why is it saying the living will be judged? What judgment is that talking about? So the Midrash Shmuel begins with like a whole host of questions, we can call it. And first of all, he says, everybody knows everybody's going to die. That's obvious. Number one. Number two, if you compare the first two phrases, it says, Hayulodim lamos, those who are born will die, and the dead will live. It would seem to have the proper contrast. It should have said, the living will die, and the dead will live, not the born will die, and the dead will live. It should either say, those who are born will die, and those who will die will live, or it should say, the living will die, and the dead will live. But it says, those who are born will die, and the dead will live. So that's another little thing he points out. He also points out that the word lehechayos, hamesim lehechayos, the dead will live, it's literally, I think, will cause to live or something. So here they translate it as brought to life. They're brought to life. Furthermore, what is this leda, lehodia, lehivada, to know, to make known, to have the knowledge, like what's all that? And why does it say he's the yotzer and the borei? He forms and he creates. What does it mean? He's the maven, he discerns, he understands. Okay, so many questions. I don't know if we're going to answer all of them, but many questions over here. Okay, so let's discuss a little bit. So the first approach he has is that the Mishnah is teaching us how we're to live. And you know how we're to live? The way we're supposed to live is we're supposed to kill ourselves. What do we mean by that? So there's actually a teaching from Parshas Chukas. It says, Zos HaTorah, Adam ki yamus ba'oel. This is the Torah, a man who dies in a tent, and it teaches the laws of tumah, of spiritual impurity for a dead body, for being inside the same building as a dead body, under the same roof. But the sages have a teaching there that, because it says, Zos HaTorah, this is the Torah, Adam ki yamus ba'oel, a man who dies in the tent. And the sages teach us that how does a person acquire Torah? Only somebody who is memis atma alel, somebody who kills themselves over it. Meaning, to acquire Torah, a person has to toil. A person has to work hard. It doesn't come easy. If a person just lays back and puts their feet up, it's not going to work. A person has to throw themselves into it, push themselves. And the expression is to kill themselves over it. So he suggests that that's what it's telling me. Hayulodim lamos. Those who are born are put in this world to kill ourselves, meaning to work hard, to toil, we're not here to just put our feet up and take it easy. And but if we don't, if we just take it easy and we don't kill ourselves, we just live, we just live the good life and try to pursue the comforts and the pleasures of the world, so then that's actually going to kill us in the world to come. We're not going to have our portion, our proper portion in the world to come. So when it says Hayilodim Lamos, people are born to kill themselves, to toil. And then if a person is somebody who toiled, who killed themselves, so then they're going to live. They're going to have a nice portion in the next world. V'achayim, but those who just lived in this world didn't kill themselves, lidon, they're going to be judged. They're going to be found wanting when it comes time for judgment, and the judgment is not going to be in their favor. That's one explanation of the opening line. Hayilodim lamos, those who are born are here to toil, to kill ourselves, and those who kill ourselves, those who toil, lechayos, they're going to live in the next world. V'chaim, but those who just live a pleasurable life in this world without pushing ourselves, lidon, they're going to be judged in the next world. Another explanation is that and this finds itself in other places in Pirkei Avos as well, that we need to remember the day of death. And it's telling us that from the day we're born, we don't remember that much, but once we've reached the maturity to develop such a perspective, we have to remember lamos, that we're going to die one day. Life, we don't know when our last day will be, and the sages teach us a person should do tshuva every day because, well, it says a person should do tshuva the day before they die, but since a person never knows when they're going to die, they should do tshuva every day. They should repent every day, which basically means that it's a hard exercise to do, but it's a good exercise to imagine that this is my last day on this earth. And if it's my last day, how am I going to use it? And that's how we can, obviously, we would want to maximize our last day. And that's how we should live every day. We should try to maximize every day. So if from when we're born, we bear in mind, lamos, hayilodim lamos, those who are born should remember they're going to die. They're not here forever. And therefore, they should, with that perspective, a person will maximize each day. And then it says, v'hamesim lehechayos, that that after we die, we will be revived to face punishment, to face retribution, to face the consequences for our negative choices in this world, and meaning v'achayim lidon, and we're brought back to be judged. So, in other words, hayilodim lamos, you have to remember from when you're born that you're going to die. And v'amesim lechayos, and when you die, you're going to be brought up to life, or brought before God, v'achayim lidon, and to be judged. So keeping all that in mind, so then a person will maximize every moment, every day on this world. And it says after that, that with that knowledge, what can lead us to that understanding and that conclusion is to remember that Hashem is the creator. Meaning, it might be hard to imagine that after we die, we're going to be brought before God in judgment. But if we remember that God is the creator of everything, then it's not as hard to picture that, to imagine that. So that's the lead-in. It says, remember, those who are born should remember that they'll die. And when they die, they're going to be brought to life, so to speak, to be judged. And we can know that because we know that Hashem is the creator of the world, so he can also bring us before him in judgment. Alternatively, this Mishnah could be teaching the answer to the question which we dealt with in a few Mishnahs a couple weeks ago, the question about why the righteous suffer and why the wicked prosper. And the reason is because, like we just mentioned in the previous Mishnah, that one of the worst traits that a person can have is kina, is envy. And at times we might see the wicked prosper, and we might be envious. This person is pursuing all the pleasures of this world, and they don't care about anything. And look, they're prospering. And that might lead a person to envy, and that envy may lead a person to heresy, to say, well, it must be that there's no reward and punishment, and look, the wicked are prospering. So the Mishnah says, first of all, you should know, hayilodim lamos. Everybody who's born is going to die. This world is temporary. So whatever you see right in this world is temporary. And hamesim lehechayos, that those who suffered in this world, those who had it difficult, that's to give them, potentially to give them greater reward in the next world. Lehechayos, to live, to give them life in the next world. And because everybody has some sins, and the suffering that a person might experience in this world could be to cleanse them of those sins. So it's in order that they should live in the next world. V'achayim, and those who live in this world, those who we see prospering in this world, that could be just they can get their judgment in the next world. So this is one of the most common answers, one of the answers that we discussed to why the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer. It could be the wicked are prospering in this world to get their little bit of reward that's due to them for their few good deeds, but in the next world they're not going to get much of a portion. And the righteous who suffer in this world, it's that everybody sins a little bit. They get their punishment in this world. That way they have a greater portion in the next world. Hayilodim lamos. Remember, everyone is going to die. This world is temporary. We move on to the next world. Those who are born will die. And hamesim leichayos, those who suffer in this world, they're going to live great in the next world because they got their punishment in this world and they're going to have a full portion in the world to come. And achayim lidon, those who it looks like they're living it up in this world, that may be that they're getting their reward in this world, but they'll be judged in the next world. So in this opening line, just to close, we had 3 explanations that we gave. Number 1 is that it's telling us that we're born here to toil, and if we toil, if we kill ourselves in this world, we'll live in the next world. But if we don't toil, then we'll be judged in the next world. Number 2 is we need to remember the day of death. Hayilodim lamos, we're born here. From the moment we're born, we should remember that life is temporary. Take advantage, maximize each day, and because we're going to be judged in the next world, we want to be positioning ourselves properly for that. And lastly, it could be an answer to the question of why the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper at times. You see, why are the wicked prospering? You're envious. The Mishnah comes and answers the question, and it says, this world is temporary. Hayilodim lamos, those who are born are going to die eventually. And it's the next world that's eternal. Those who suffer, those who were dead, so to speak, in this world, who had it difficult in this world, they are going to live in the next world. They're going to be rewarded in the next world. And achayim, those who lived it up in this world, that could be that they were just getting their small piece of reward in this world, but in the next world, they will be judged, and therefore we shouldn't be envious of when we see that the wicked prosper in this world. Okay.